They humiliated him without mercy, not because he was a bad man, but because he was poor. In a mansion built on billions, a simple boy stood holding nothing but love for their daughter. Her father's voice was cold, sharp, final. "You don't belong in our world." She stayed silent. The room watched. That night his heart shattered. But something else was born. Because when love is insulted, it doesn't die. It becomes dangerous. He grew up in a narrow street where dreams were bigger than houses and hope was stronger than money. The poor boy learned early that life would never be kind to him, but it also taught him honesty, patience, and dignity. He worked small jobs from a young age, never ashamed of hard labor, never angry at his fate. What he lacked in wealth, he made up for with kindness and a quiet strength that few noticed. He met her by accident, in a place where their worlds should never have crossed. She was the daughter of a billionaire family, raised among luxury private drivers and guarded smiles. Yet when she spoke to him, there was no arrogance in her voice, only curiosity. He treated her like a human being, not a trophy, not a symbol of status. That simple respect became the foundation of their bond. Their friendship grew slowly, naturally, away from cameras and expectations. He listened to her fears about living in a golden cage, while she admired his freedom and sincerity. Love arrived without permission. For the first time, he felt seen. For the first time, she felt loved for who she truly was, not for her last name. But secrets do not survive in the world of the rich. Whispers reached her family, and concern quickly turned into outrage. To them, he was not a person. He was a risk, a stain on their legacy. Her father decided to end the matter with dignity and force, inviting the boy to their mansion under the pretense of a conversation. The moment he entered that house, he knew he did not belong. Marble floors reflected his worn shoes, and cold eyes followed his every step. Still, he stood straight. He spoke respectfully. He admitted he had nothing except love and good intentions. That honesty became his crime. Her father's words were sharp and public. He mocked the boy's background, his education, his future. He accused him of chasing money, of dreaming beyond his place. Laughter filled the room, soft, controlled, cruel. The boy felt smaller with every sentence, but he did not beg. He did not shout. He only asked for one thing: the right to love her. Silence followed, then rejection, absolute and final. The girl stood frozen, torn between fear and love, unable to defend him. That silence hurt more than the insults. With his dignity barely intact, the boy turned and walked out, his heart breaking with every step. Outside the mansion, the world felt heavier. Love had brought him there, and humiliation sent him away. But as he walked into the night, one truth burned inside him. He would never allow anyone to make him feel worthless again. That day did not end his story. It marked the painful beginning of his transformation. The poor boy's love for the billionaire's daughter was no secret, though he had hoped it would remain a quiet, private thing. Their bond had grown over months of laughter, shared secrets, and stolen moments away from the glittering world of wealth she was born into. He admired her not for her fortune, but for her heart, her vulnerability, and the way she saw him as an equal. She, in turn, found in him a freedom and honesty that her gilded life had never offered. But wealth has its guardians, and in her family, love was measured in status, influence, and bank accounts. Rumors of their closeness reached her father and older relatives faster than either of them could react. To them, the boy was not only unworthy but dangerous, a threat to the family's image and legacy. They began observing him, scrutinizing his every word, gesture, and history, determined to uncover any flaw they could weaponize. Eventually, the confrontation came. They invited him to a formal dinner at their mansion, a trap disguised as civility. He entered the grand hall trying to maintain his calm, but the tension was suffocating. Crystal chandeliers reflected his humble clothes, the silence of servants and high-profile guests pressing down on him. Her father's eyes, cold and calculating, seemed to pierce through every inch of him. The attack was subtle at first. Thinly veiled jokes about his upbringing, questions laced with mockery, and comments on how he could never provide a life equal to hers. But the father's words soon sharpened, cutting deep. He accused the boy of being naive, reckless, and opportunistic, suggesting that his affection was driven not by love, but by a desire to climb into wealth. The laughter of the guests rang in his ears, and the girl's forced composure only deepened the sting. He tried to defend himself with dignity, explaining that his feelings were genuine, that he sought nothing but to love her and protect her happiness. But in that room, words of sincerity were powerless. The father's judgment overshadowed truth, the social hierarchy silenced compassion. By the evening's end, the humiliation was complete. He was declared unfit, unworthy, and rejected. The girl, bound by fear and familial pressure, could only watch silently, her tears hidden from the world. As he walked away from the mansion, the boy felt the weight of every insult and every eye that had judged him. The world of the rich had rejected him, yet in his heart, a quiet fire ignited. He realized that humiliation could either crush him or forge him into someone stronger. That night, he vowed silently to himself that he would never allow poverty, judgment, or fear to define him again. What began as innocent love had become a battle of pride and resilience. Though he left in pain, he carried with him the first spark of determination that would one day challenge the world that had scorned him. His journey had only just begun. Their love had grown quietly, hidden in the small moments of laughter and conversation, yet it was powerful enough to threaten a world built on wealth and control. The poor boy and the billionaire's daughter knew that society would never approve, but their hearts didn't care. They believed love could survive anything, until the full force of her family's power hit them. The girl's family, ruthless and influential, decided to act. They isolated her from the outside world, controlling her every move. Phones were taken away, friends were forbidden, and her freedom was stripped under the guise of protection. Every attempt to communicate with the boy was blocked, and the messages they once shared now turned into whispered memories. She felt trapped, a prisoner in her own home, while he felt powerless, desperate, and frustrated. Their worlds seemed to stretch further apart with every passing day. Determined to see her one last time, the boy tried to visit her secretly, sneaking into the estate. But the security, trained to protect wealth and legacy, intercepted him. The confrontation was humiliating. Guards pushed him out, and the family's sneers followed him, turning his love into public spectacle. He realized that affection alone could not shield him from the cruelty of power. Humiliation was no longer just an insult. It had become a weapon to separate them. The billionaire father orchestrated a final devastating blow. At a high-profile gathering surrounded by society's elite, he publicly denounced the boy, mocking his background, education, and worthiness. The crowd, conditioned to respect wealth, joined in the laughter. The girl was forced to watch silently, unable to speak, her heart torn between fear and defiance. The boy's dignity crumbled in front of everyone, yet he stood tall in spirit, refusing to beg or bow. The family announced her engagement to a man of equal status, a calculated move to erase any hope of their love. The girl was obedient but heartbroken, her eyes silently pleading for a world in which she could choose love over legacy. The boy left the mansion that night, broken but not defeated. Every step away from her home was a step into the painful reality that their love was being torn apart by society, money, and pride. Yet even in despair, The boy's heart ignited with determination. Humiliation had wounded him, but it had also awakened a fire he could not ignore. He knew that he could not change the past, but he could build a future where he would never again be powerless, where his love, courage, and dignity could no longer be dismissed. That night marked the end of innocence and the beginning of a journey fueled by heartbreak, resilience, and an unwavering desire to prove that love, no matter how crushed, could rise again. Years had passed since that night of humiliation, yet the memory of her father's words lingered like a shadow. The poor boy, once powerless and broken, had transformed his pain into purpose. He had left the world of wealth behind, determined to rebuild himself from scratch. Every setback, every moment of struggle only hardened his resolve. Hunger taught him patience. Failure taught him strategy. Loneliness taught him self-reliance. By the time he returned to the city of opulence, he was no longer the same boy who had trembled under the gaze of the rich. Through relentless effort, he built a life of influence and power. Business ventures, smart investments, and sheer determination allowed him to rise quietly, unnoticed by the very people who had once mocked him. He no longer needed validation from society's elite. He had carved his own place in the world. His reputation grew, and his name began to command respect in circles that had once dismissed him. Yet, despite his success, a part of his heart still belonged to her, the girl he had once loved and lost. Fate, as it often does, brought them back into the same sphere. A business event, a social gala, or even a chance encounter. He was suddenly in the same city, moving in circles that overlapped with her family. The very family that had shamed him now found themselves encountering a man whose power and success they could not ignore. The tables had shifted, and the boy who had been humiliated was now a figure of influence and respect. Her father, once confident in his authority and judgment, now faced a reality he had never anticipated. The man he had insulted, dismissed, and mocked was no longer someone to be overlooked. Respect, fear, and even a hint of regret began to creep into his demeanor. The girl, meanwhile, saw him not as the poor boy she once knew, but as a man who had endured, survived, and conquered. The spark between them reignited, though the circumstances were now charged with complexity, pride, and unspoken questions. Yet, it was not just about revenge. The boy had grown beyond anger. He had learned the value of dignity and self-worth. His presence alone spoke volumes to the family who had once belittled him. The girl felt admiration, longing, and a painful awareness of lost time. Their reunion was emotional, charged with memories of heartbreak and triumph alike. Now, the question loomed, would love survive the trials of the past, or had life and pride built walls too high to overcome? The poor boy, now a man of power, understood that true victory was not humiliation returned. It was mastery over one's destiny, the ability to stand tall no matter who doubted you, and the courage to love or let go with dignity intact. The boy who had once been humiliated now returned to the world that had scorned him, not as a poor, timid soul, but as a man of influence, respect, and quiet power. Years of struggle, sacrifice, and perseverance had transformed him into someone the billionaire family could no longer ignore. His presence alone challenged the legacy they had so carefully curated, and whispers of his success began circulating among their social circles. The same people who had mocked him were now forced to acknowledge his achievements, a truth that hung heavy in the air. The final confrontation was inevitable. He was invited, or perhaps he orchestrated the meeting himself, into the same mansion where his humiliation had first begun. Her father, once arrogant and unyielding, now studied him with a mixture of caution and disbelief. The girl stood nearby, her emotions a tangle of admiration, longing, and fear. Time had changed everything. She saw not the poor boy she had once known, but the man he had become, molded by hardship and refined by resilience. The conversation began with polite formalities, but the tension was palpable. The father attempted his usual intimidation, reminding him of the years he had spent beneath them, questioning his intentions once again. But the boy no longer needed validation. He spoke with calm authority, recounting his journey from humiliation to achievement, demonstrating that his worth had never been defined by wealth, but by character, courage, and determination. Every word resonated not with anger, but with quiet strength, a strength that could not be mocked or dismissed. The girl's emotions finally surfaced. She admitted the pain she had felt, the silence that had kept her from defending him, and the love that had never truly faded. The air was thick with unspoken apologies, regrets, and lingering affection. Their connection, tested by society and wealth, had survived because it was genuine and unbreakable. Now the question remained, could they embrace this love, or had life and pride built walls too high? The boy's response was measured yet powerful. He had no desire for revenge, only justice for his own dignity. He offered a choice: reconciliation on equal terms, or walking away with respect and closure. It was not about winning her back. It was about proving that he was no longer defined by humiliation, and that love could survive if rooted in truth and respect. The billionaire father, faced with his own mistakes and the boy's undeniable transformation, was forced to reckon with the consequences of pride and prejudice. The girl, finally freed from fear and obligation, chose love and honesty, embracing the man who had endured so much. Yet even if she had chosen differently, the boy's journey had already been victorious. He had conquered his past, claimed his worth, and proven that true strength comes from resilience, not wealth. The story ended not merely with reunion, but with empowerment. The poor boy had become a man who could face the world with dignity, love with courage, and command respect without fear. In the end, humiliation had been a crucible, and from it, a hero had emerged.